All right, so if you clicked on the Drudge Report today, this is what you would see in response to the jobs numbers released this morning by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Now, there's no doubt that today's jobs numbers themselves were disappointing. American employers added 88,000 jobs in March, less than half what was expected. We should take that, of course, with a big grain of salt, as we have learned, because these numbers are preliminary and cursory. For instance, the job numbers in January were revised, taking jobs growth from 119,000 to 148,000. And in February, the jobs growth was revised from 236,000 to 268. But the Drudge Report chose to focus on the 90 million out of the workforce for a couple of reasons. One, the unemployment rate last month actually went down, dropping from 7.7 to 7.6%. We know the Drudge Report won't lead with that as a top-line number. And two, you probably haven't encountered this yet, but on the right wing, there's a growing chorus that identifies workforce participation and the dropping out of the workforce as the great silent scourge of the socialist era of President Barack Hussein Obama. To these folks, basically what Obama's America looks like is that under the cover of existing programs, people have been moving from the workforce into the social safety net in the form of Social Security insurance and Social Security disability insurance.
Just over the last 3 months, there have been more people going on disability than actually finding jobs in this country?
Yeah, I don't think this is what American voters had in mind when they voted for change in 2008.
The administration has made dependency a watchword of its administration, and therefore they have reduced the standards for people.
So it's easier to get disability? Is it really?
It is much easier.
A lot of men, 25, 26 years old, sitting on a porch all day long because every two weeks they get a crazy check, and they're on disability.
In the Baltimore Sun on Wednesday, Jonah Goldberg wrote, as the nature of the economy changes, disability programs are sometimes taking the place of welfare for those who feel locked out of the workforce. In the last few weeks, a remarkable thing happened. So this right-wing meme, which is all the rage and the reason the Drudge Report went with its headline, jumped the species barrier into the mainstream media. The very highly respected NPR's Planet Money even did a long piece about people dropping out of the workforce and into disability. Quoting from the Planet Money piece, and this will ring a bell, disability has also become a de facto welfare program for people without a lot of education or job skills, but it wasn't supposed to serve this purpose. It's not a retraining program designed to get people back onto their feet. That piece has sparked a huge controversy. As we enter budget season and Washington contemplates so-called entitlement reform, the stakes are very high. So much so, in fact, that 8 former commissioners of the Social Security Administration wrote a detailed open letter to NPR to express their concerns with the report, stating, quote, as former commissioners of the agency, we could not sit on the sidelines and witness this one perspective on the disability programs threaten to pull the rug out from under millions of people with severe disabilities. Drastic changes to these programs will lead to drastic consequences for some of America's most vulnerable people. And drastic changes to Social Security disability program is exactly what the Drudge Report readers want. Joining me tonight from Newton, Massachusetts, is Michael Astrew, former Social Security Commissioner under Presidents Bush and Obama. And at the table, Rebecca Vallis, attorney and disability advocate with Community Legal Services in Philadelphia, and Ovik Roy, senior fellow at Manhattan Institute for Policy Research. I should say we invited reporter Hannah Jeffy-Walt and producer Alex Bloomberg from NPR's Planet Money to join us tonight. They were unavailable, but have expressed interest in coming on in the future. All right, Michael, I guess I'll begin with you. Why did you decide to write this letter?
Well, we decided to write this letter because the factual premise of the NPR article is just not true. They use loaded terms like skyrocketing, basically told the American people that there's some unexpected, sudden change in disability policy. And it's not true. You read the trustees' reports for the last 20 years, we've been saying since 1994 that there's going to be a solvency issue in the Disability Trust Fund in 2016, and that's exactly what's going to happen. So it's a little bit like saying daylight is skyrocketing in April. It's not skyrocketing. It's changing because of things that we understand, and the same thing is true in disability. Well, but there are, when you go through, when you listen to the piece, when you read the article, there are a bunch of eye-popping statistics about how much it's expanded, right? It's tripled since 1980 and doubled since 1995 in terms of the amount of people that are on disability, right? There are more people on it now. That, I understand why people think that's worrying. There's also statistics about the degree to which people, once they go on to disability, can get back into the labor force, right? So that's another concern. And then the third thing that I found persuasive about the piece, or at least not persuasive but provocative, was the idea that the people,
the diagnoses that are expanding in disability are those that seem the most nebulous about things like chronic pain, not that people don't have chronic pain or psychological conditions, as opposed to, broken legs from factory incidents, etc. So maybe you can respond to those.
Mm-hmm. Well,
so here, actually, I was going to Rebecca.
Sorry, Commissioner.
Sure.
So, I think if we're going to have a conversation about the Social Security disability programs, I think it's really important to start with facts, because I think...
I hate those, but continue.
Well, I apologize, because I'm about to spew a lot of them. So I
Go to town.
You start with the fact that these are vital programs, right, for people with really significant disabilities, and yet they are the subject of, I think, misconceptions that people are probably more familiar with than they are with the actual facts. So here are some facts. The disability standard is in the United States is the strictest in the world. It is the strictest disability standard in the world.
By standard, you mean I think I can't work because of a disability. I apply to go on disability, and the standards that are applied, you are saying, are the strictest.
It is incredibly, incredibly strict. And so what it means is most people who apply are denied. 60% or more of people who apply for these benefits are denied. So the concept that there's some sort of catch-all, it's just misplaced and it's not supported by facts. The people who get the benefits, many of them are terminally ill. We're talking about people with congestive heart failure, people with end-stage renal disease, people with severe cancer, people with severe mental illness. We're talking about the most severe impairments. 1 in 5 people in this country has a disability. 1 in 10 has a severe disability. We're talking about a subset of people in this country who have disabilities because the program, by virtue of its strict standard, is reserved for people with the most severe disabilities.
Is that persuasive to you, Avik?
Yeah, so I would say a couple of things. One, in terms of the demographic argument. So 2 economists for the National Bureau of Economic Research calculated this, and they found that 15% of the growth in disabilities participation for men was demographics, aging in the population. For women, it was only 4%. So there's a substantial amount that's not demographically driven. A Senate investigation found that as much as 25% of the participation in the program could be waste. Now, we don't know the exact number, and I'm sure that Mike has his own estimate of what the number is. But to say that there's one thing, that the statutory provision or criteria of what makes someone eligible. And then there's the actual enforcement and application. Just because a letter of the law says something doesn't mean that there aren't people who are being certified as disabled who really aren't.
So here's, Michael, I want to go to you on this, right? So the question is, what's driving the expansion of people with disability? And one big question is, as a population ages, we expect more people to file for disability because people who are older are more likely. And the question is, what percentage of this big change we're seeing is driven by that?
Okay, so I concede there are a couple economists out there, and I have a suspicion of whose payroll they're on, that have been mischaracterizing the numbers systematically. But you just have to go to the trustees' report. We cover this every single year. How much of the change is due to what? And you can go back for 20 years. It has hardly changed at all. It's exactly as it was predicted the last time Congress legislated in this area in 1994. And it's most of it is simply the baby boomers going through their disability-prone years. Just like we're getting a lot more retirement applications, surprise, surprise, the baby boomers are getting older. It's the exact same thing with disability. You get people a lot sicker at 55 than at 25, and so we get a lot more disability applications.
Mike, but do you believe that there's no waste in the system? What percentage of applications are mistakes or waste or fraud or abuse? What percentage?
Look, you can't have a $150 billion program where, at the end of the day, a lot of the cases require judgment. Mental disabilities, pain. You can't run a blood test. You can't run a genetic test. There is some degree of fraud in the program. Absolutely. Senate committee tried for 5 years to try to show that there was massive fraud, and they couldn't do it. And they ended up distorting our own internal quality statistics on, the quality of the paperwork instead of being able to show that there was broad fraud. It's under 1% of the cases, and no one's ever been able to show that it's anything different.
Rebecca, you work on the front lines with folks that are trying to get disability, so I'd like you to just hear what your experience has been about how much of that is out there.
I mean, I think that's another one of the central misconceptions, is that either it's incredibly easy to get benefits or that you can scam the system. I mean, I represent people directly who have significant disabilities, who have been denied despite their significant disabilities purely because they didn't have enough medical evidence, because one of their doctors didn't submit records, or because a hospital they had been to didn't submit records. And when I help and actually develop the record by getting evidence of all the impairments that they have, that's the kind of thing that can make a real difference in someone's case. But I can tell you, this is a system that is incredibly hard to scam.
And in fact, over time, what's interesting, applications have gone up quite a bit, but the actual awards have ticked up. I mean, there's actually a growing.
Actually ticked down.
There's actually a growing.
Chris, you're missing the Alice in Wonderland aspect.
I want
to
hear the Alice in Wonderland aspect, but just hold on one second because I have to take a break. So hold that thought, and you can tell me about Alice in Wonderland right after this.